By 1945, Germany's surface fleet was a force in ruins. Battleships and a lone carrier, once symbols of a bold naval vision, now lay scattered across Europe's collapsing front. Some were afloat, others abandoned, others barely holding together. The war was over, but for these ships, their final chapter was only beginning. In January 1939, Admiral Erich Raeder presented Adolf Hitler with Plan Z, an ambitious blueprint to build a navy capable of challenging the Royal Navy by 1945. The plan called for 10 battleships, 4 aircraft carriers, 15 armored cruisers, and over 200 submarines. It would cost 33 billion Reichsmarks and require 6 years of uninterrupted construction. But Plan Z assumed Germany wouldn't fight Britain until the mid-1940s. When war broke out in September 1939, the plan was barely 20% complete. Only 4 battleships were operational. The aircraft carrier Graf Zeppelin sat unfinished. Resources were diverted to U-boats instead. Plan Z died before it truly began, leaving Germany's surface fleet to fight a war it was never designed to win. Of the 4 battleships that did reach service, Bismarck would be the first to test Germany's naval power and the first to fall. Bismarck's war lasted 8 days. 8 days that cost the Royal Navy one of its most famous ships and forced Britain to mobilize nearly every available warship in the Atlantic. The operation began on May 18, 1941. Operation Rheinübung. Bismarck and the heavy cruiser Prinz Eugen slipped out of Gotenhafen, bound for the Atlantic shipping lanes. British intelligence detected them almost immediately. Reconnaissance aircraft tracked their movement through Norwegian waters and the Royal Navy scrambled to intercept. On May 24th, in the Denmark Strait between Greenland and Iceland, the battlecruiser HMS Hood closed in with the battleship HMS Prince of Wales. At 5:52 a.m., the ships opened fire at a range of nearly 13 miles. Within minutes, Bismarck's 5th salvo struck Hood's aft magazine. The battlecruiser exploded in a massive fireball and broke in half. She sank in 3 minutes. Of her 1,418 crew, only 3 survived. The shock rippled through the Royal Navy and across Britain. Hood had been a symbol of British naval power for 2 decades. Her destruction demanded revenge. Prime Minister Winston Churchill reportedly gave a simple order: sink the Bismarck. But the battle had cost Bismarck too. Shells from the Prince of Wales had ruptured her forward fuel tanks, leaking oil and forcing a retreat toward Brest in occupied France. For the next 2 days, British cruisers shadowed her across the Atlantic while reinforcements closed in from all directions. On May 26th, swordfish torpedo bombers from HMS Ark Royal found their mark. One torpedo jammed Bismarck's rudders, leaving her unable to steer, circling helplessly in the open ocean. That night, as destroyers harassed her with torpedo attacks, Admiral Gunther Lütjens radioed a final message to Germany: "Ship unmaneuverable. We shall fight to the last shell." Morning came on May 27th. The battleships HMS King George V and HMS Rodney appeared on the horizon. For nearly 2 hours they pounded Bismarck from both sides, reducing her superstructure to twisted wreckage. By 10:15 a.m. she was a burning hulk, listing heavily. Whether she was scuttled by her own crew or simply succumbed to damage remains debated. At 10:40 a.m. Bismarck capsized and sank, taking over 2,100 men with her. Only 115 survived. The wreck was discovered in 1989 by Robert Ballard, lying upright at 15,700 feet. Despite the damage, much of her hull remains intact, still imposing 470 miles west of Brest. While Bismarck burned, 3 other German battleships remained operational: Scharnhorst, Gneisenau, and Tirpitz. Each would meet destruction differently. Scharnhorst had success early. Alongside her sister, Gneisenau, she raided Atlantic convoys during Operation Berlin in early 1941, sinking 22 Allied merchant ships. The 2 battleships returned to Brest, where British bombers attacked them relentlessly for nearly a year. In February 1942, they executed the audacious Channel Dash, a daylight sprint up the English Channel back to Germany. It was a tactical success, but a strategic retreat. The Kriegsmarine's Atlantic ambitions were over. Scharnhorst was redeployed to Norway in March 1943, tasked with threatening Arctic convoys supplying the Soviet Union. On Christmas Day 1943, she received orders to intercept an Allied convoy. German intelligence had misjudged British strength. The battleship HMS Duke of York was lying in wait. The Battle of North Cape unfolded in darkness and Arctic storms. Duke of York's radar-directed guns found their target first, crippling Scharnhorst's boiler rooms and slowing her to a crawl. Destroyers closed in with torpedoes. At 7:45 p.m. on December 26th, Scharnhorst capsized and sank. Nearly 1,900 men went down with her. Only 36 were pulled from the freezing water. Gneisenau never got her final battle. After the Channel dash, she entered the dry dock at Kiel for repairs. On the night of February 26, 1942, RAF bombers scored a direct hit. The bomb penetrated her forward magazine and detonated among the ammunition stores. The explosion tore through the bow, killing dozens and rendering the ship unseaworthy. Repair plans were ambitious. Engineers proposed upgrading her main battery with the same weapons fitted to Bismarck. Work began in 1942, but resources dwindled. In January 1943, after the failed Battle of the Barents Sea, Hitler ordered all major surface units scrapped. Work on Gneisenau ceased immediately. Her guns were removed and installed at coastal batteries in Denmark. The hull sat empty in Gottenhafen for 2 years. As Soviet forces advanced in March 1945, the hulk was towed to the harbour entrance and scuttled as a block ship on March 27th. Polish authorities raised the wreck in 1951 and broke it up for scrap. Some historians believe steel from the Gneisenau was recycled into Polish merchant ships, giving the battleship an unexpected second life. Tirpitz never fought a surface engagement. She didn't need to. Her mere existence tied down enormous British resources. As long as she remained operational in Norwegian fjords, the Royal Navy couldn't risk weakening its home fleet. Battleships, carriers and cruisers remained stationed in Scotland, waiting for her to sortie. But the British were patient too. They attacked Tirpitz relentlessly. Bombers struck her anchorages. In September 1943, British midget submarines from Operation Source penetrated Carfjord's defences and planted mines beneath her hull. The explosions caused severe damage, knocking out one propeller shaft and flooding machinery spaces. Tirpitz would never be fully operational again. Still, she remained a threat. In October 1944, she was moved to Tromsø Fjord for repairs. The Allies decided to finish her. On November 12, 1944, 29 Lancaster bombers took off from Scotland, each carrying a 12,000-pound tallboy bomb. The weather was clear. At 9:41 a.m., the first bombs fell. 2 tallboys struck directly. One punched through the armoured deck near the forward turret. The other detonated amidships. Massive internal explosions followed as ammunition cooked off. Tirpitz began listing to port. At 10:40 a.m., she capsized completely, trapping over 900 men inside the inverted hull. Rescuers cut through the steel and saved a few dozen, but most never escaped. The capsized wreck remained in Tromsø Fjord until the late 1940s, when it was partially dismantled in place. Prinz Eugen, by contrast, survived everything. The Admiral Hipper-class heavy cruiser had accompanied Bismarck in May 1941 and helped destroy HMS Hood. After separating from the doomed battleship, she reached Brest, participated in the Channel dash, and spent the rest of the war supporting retreating German forces in the Baltic. When Germany surrendered, Prinz Eugen was one of the few major warships still afloat. Britain took custody, then transferred her to the United States. She was commissioned USS Prinz Eugen and towed across the Atlantic, through the Panama Canal, to Bikini Atoll. There, in July 1946, she would face something no ship had ever endured: nuclear fire. On July 1st, the Able bomb detonated. 3 weeks later, the Baker bomb exploded underwater. Prinz Eugen survived both blasts, scorched, radioactive, but afloat. The radiation, however, made repairs impossible. Contaminated steel couldn't be welded or cut safely. In September, the Navy towed her to Kwajalein Atoll, but the damage was irreversible. On December 22, 1946, she developed a severe list and capsized in shallow water. The wreck remains there today, partially visible above the surface. One propeller was later salvaged and now stands at the Labo Naval Memorial in Germany. Between 2010 and 2018, US Navy divers removed remaining fuel to prevent environmental damage. Germany's pocket battleships Admiral Scheer and Lutzow were designed for a specific purpose: commerce raiding. Fast enough to outrun battleships, powerful enough to destroy cruisers, they were meant to prowl the Atlantic, hunting convoys beyond the reach of the Royal Navy. Admiral Scheer proved the concept worked. Between November 1940 and April 1941, she ranged across the Atlantic and into the Indian Ocean, sinking 113,223 gross registered tons of Allied shipping, more than any other German capital ship. By 1943, Allied convoy defenses tightened. Scheer was reassigned to training duties and coastal bombardment in the Baltic. On April 9, 1945, RAF bombers caught her at Kiel. Direct hits capsized her at the dock. After the war, the wreck was partially dismantled, with the remains buried beneath rubble. Lutzow, formerly Deutschland, renamed to avoid propaganda embarrassment, had less success. She participated in the Norwegian invasion, was torpedoed, and spent much of the war under repair. In April 1945, an RAF tallboy bomb struck her at Swinemünde, tearing open her port side. She settled in shallow water but continued firing at Soviet forces until May 4th, when scuttling charges detonated prematurely. The Soviets raised her in 1947 and used her for weapons tests before sinking her for good on July 22nd. Graf Zeppelin represented Germany's greatest naval ambition and its most spectacular failure. Laid down in 1936 and launched in 1938, the carrier was 85% complete by 1939, but completion required cooperation between the Kriegsmarine and the Luftwaffe, and cooperation never came. Hermann Göring, head of the Luftwaffe, refused to allocate pilots or aircraft to the Navy. Admiral Raeder pushed for completion, but resources went to U-boats and coastal defenses instead. Work stopped in 1940, resumed briefly in 1942 after Raeder witnessed the effectiveness of carriers, then ceased permanently in February 1943 when Hitler lost faith in surface ships entirely. Graf Zeppelin sat abandoned until April 1945, when her crew scuttled her in the Oder River. The Soviets raised her in 1946 and used her for target practice in August 1947. She endured 6 bombs and 2 torpedoes before finally sinking. Her wreck was discovered in 2006, lying 87 meters down off Poland. Thank you for watching. Like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell for more History Inside. If you found this video insightful, watch What Happened to German U-Boats After World War II next. A deep look at how the U-boat fleet was captured, studied, and scattered across the world in the aftermath of the war. And we'll see you in the next one.